The nights in Crescent City were unforgiving, especially in the heart of winter. For Jaden Carter, the bitter wind was just another harsh reminder of the life he had been dealt. At only 17, he had spent more years in shelters and foster homes than he cared to count. The Haven shelter was his current refuge, but it was hardly a home. Its cracked walls and creaking floors did little to comfort him, but at least it was better than sleeping on the streets. Jaden wasn't one to complain, though. He had learned early that complaining didn't change anything. Instead, he clung to a quiet hope that one day life would be different, that one day he wouldn't be invisible. In his tattered backpack, he carried a worn photograph, a baby's face faintly visible with the initials JC written on the back. It was the only thing connecting him to a past he didn't remember. Sometimes, when the world felt too heavy, Jaden would sit in his corner of the shelter and stare at the photo, imagining a life where someone had wanted him. Every morning, Jaden woke up before the rest of the shelter and made his way to Horizon Plaza, the grandest shopping mall in Crescent City. He worked there as a janitor, cleaning up after people who didn't even know he existed. The plaza was a stark contrast to the life Jaden lived. Gleaming floors, luxury boutiques, and the scent of freshly brewed coffee and expensive cologne filled the air. It was a place where the wealthy roamed freely, completely unaware of boys like Jaden. "Kid, you really think this job's going to take you anywhere?" Frank Harrison, his older co-worker, often sneered. Frank was a man in his 50s, bitter and beaten down by life. "They don't see you, Jaden. People like us, we're just background noise." But Jaden didn't let Frank's cynicism weigh him down. "Maybe they don't see me now," he'd reply softly, "but one day they will." Rachel Adams, a boutique worker at one of the luxury stores, had noticed Jaden's quiet determination. "You've got more fight in you than most people here," she told him one afternoon during her break. "Don't let anyone take that from you." Her words stayed with him, a small ember of encouragement in an otherwise cold world. It was on one of those ordinary mornings at Horizon Plaza that everything changed. Jaden arrived early, the mall still quiet, the soft hum of lights filling the empty halls. He grabbed his mop and bucket, ready for another day of work, but something felt different. There was an unusual energy in the air, a kind of restless buzz. As Jaden made his way through the corridors, he overheard whispers from a group of cashiers. "The Grants are coming today," one of them said, her voice tinged with awe. Jaden paused. "The Grants?" "Yeah," the other replied. "Thomas Grant, the tech billionaire, and his wife, Emily. They're bringing their baby, Liam. Can you imagine seeing them in person?" The name struck something in Jaden. He had seen the Grants' faces on television and in magazines. Thomas Grant was a household name, the kind of man whose wealth and power seemed untouchable. Emily Grant, his wife, was known for her beauty and philanthropy. Together, they were a picture of perfection, a family Jaden couldn't help but envy. As the morning gave way to afternoon, the buzz around the Grants' arrival grew louder. Shoppers lingered near the luxury stores, hoping for a glimpse of the famous family. Jaden kept to his work, sweeping and mopping near the food court, but he couldn't help but glance toward the entrance. And then he saw them. Thomas Grant walked in first, tall and imposing in a tailored suit. Emily followed close behind, effortlessly elegant in a soft blue coat. In her hands, she pushed a sleek stroller that held their baby Liam, his cheeks rosy and round. Their entourage trailed behind them, assistants, bodyguards, and even a photographer. Jaden watched them, a strange ache settling in his chest. They looked like they belonged to a different world, one he could never touch. As Jaden worked near one of the boutiques, he couldn't help but keep glancing at the Grants. Emily stopped outside a store, parking Liam's stroller just by the entrance as she disappeared inside with Thomas. The baby sat there contentedly, his small hands reaching for the toys clipped to the stroller. Jaden turned back to his work, but then he noticed something out of place. A man in a dark hooded jacket was standing nearby, his posture tense, his eyes locked on the stroller. Jaden's instincts kicked in. He had grown up around trouble, and he recognized it when he saw it. Something wasn't right. Before he could process what was happening, the hooded man lunged forward, shoving the stroller with all his strength. Jaden's heart stopped. The stroller, with baby Liam inside, began rolling toward the escalator at alarming speed. The crowd gasped. For a split second, the world seemed to freeze. And then Jaden ran. Without thinking, he dropped his mop and sprinted across the polished floor. His sneakers squeaked as he pushed through startled shoppers, his eyes fixed on the stroller that was now seconds away from tipping over the edge. With one final desperate leap, Jaden grabbed the handle. His momentum nearly carried him over, but he planted his feet and pulled the stroller back onto solid ground. The force of the effort sent him sprawling onto the floor, his knees scraping against the hard surface. The crowd erupted into applause as Emily Grant rushed forward, tears streaming down her face. "Oh my God," she sobbed, clutching Liam tightly in her arms. "You saved him. You saved my baby." Thomas appeared seconds later, his face pale with shock. He looked down at Jaden, who was still on the ground, breathing heavily. "You saved my son," Thomas said, his voice thick with emotion. "Thank you. Thank you so much." Jaden tried to stand, wincing at the pain in his knees. I saw what was happening," he stammered. "I couldn't let him fall." Security guards swarmed the area, dragging the hooded man away as he shouted incoherently. The Grants stood over Jaden, their gratitude evident. But Jaden felt embarrassed by all the attention. He just wanted to disappear. That evening, as the mall quieted down, Thomas Grant approached Jaden near the employee entrance. In his hand, he held an envelope. "This is for you," Thomas said, pressing it into Jaden's hands. "It's the least we can do." Jaden looked down at the envelope, confused. "What is it?" $500, Thomas replied. "To say thank you." Jaden stared at the envelope, his chest tightening. $500 was more money than he had ever held in his life. It should have felt like a blessing, but somehow it didn't. That night, as Jaden returned to the shelter, the envelope of cash burned in his pocket. He had saved Liam Grant's life, and yet he felt emptier than ever. $500 wouldn't change anything. It wouldn't fix his life or fill the void he carried inside. The next morning, Jaden woke up early and headed back to Horizon Plaza. But this time, something was different. The security guards nodded at him with respect. Rachel greeted him with a bright smile. "Morning, hero," she teased. Jaden shrugged. "I'm not a hero. I just did what anyone would do." "That's where you're wrong," she replied softly. "Not everyone would have done what you did." And then, later that afternoon, Thomas and Emily Grant returned. Not with another envelope, but with an offer. A scholarship, an internship, a chance for a new life. For the first time, someone was offering Jaden more than scraps. And for the first time, Jaden dared to believe that maybe, just maybe, he was worth more than the world had told him he was. Jaden stared at Thomas Grant in disbelief. "A scholarship," he echoed, his voice barely above a whisper. Emily Grant stepped forward, her eyes warm and sincere. "Yes, we know a good heart when we see one. Jaden, you risked your life for our son without hesitation. That kind of courage deserves more than just a thank you." Thomas nodded. "We have a foundation that helps kids like you, kids with potential, kids who just need a chance. If you're willing, we'd like to sponsor your education. We'll cover your tuition, books, and even help you find a better place to live." Jaden's hands clenched at his sides. This had to be a dream. He had spent his whole life scraping by, expecting nothing more than survival. And now, standing in the middle of Horizon Plaza with two of the wealthiest people in the city offering him a future, it felt unreal. Jaden swallowed, his throat tight. "Why me?" Thomas's expression softened. "Because you remind me of someone I used to be." He hesitated, then added, "I didn't grow up with money, Jaden. My family struggled. But someone gave me a chance once, and it changed everything. Now, I want to do the same for you." Jaden wanted to believe them, but years of disappointment had built up walls around his heart. "What if I'm not good enough?" he asked, his voice barely above a whisper. Emily placed a gentle hand on his arm. "You already proved that you are." For the first time in a long time, Jaden felt something stir deep inside him. Something he had buried beneath years of hardship. Hope. He exhaled shakily, then nodded. "Okay, I'll do it." Emily smiled, her eyes glistening. "Good. We'll take care of everything." The next few weeks were a whirlwind. The Grants arranged for Jaden to move into a small but comfortable apartment near his new school. He started classes at a prestigious academy, one he never would have dreamed of stepping foot in before. The transition wasn't easy. He felt out of place among the wealthy students, many of whom saw him as nothing more than a charity case. But Jaden had spent his whole life proving people wrong. He worked harder than ever, studying late into the night, determined not to waste the opportunity he had been given. Rachel, the boutique worker who had always encouraged him, kept in touch, reminding him to believe in himself. Months turned into a year, and Jaden thrived. He excelled in his classes, discovered a passion for business and technology, and even earned an internship at Grant Industries. One evening, as he walked through Horizon Plaza, no longer a janitor, but a young man with a future, he passed by the spot where it all changed. The place where he had saved Liam Grant's life. He reached into his wallet and pulled out the old, worn photograph of the baby with the initials JC. For years, he had looked at that picture and seen only an abandoned past. Now he saw something different. He saw a survivor. He saw a boy who had been invisible but had fought to be seen. He saw someone who had finally found his worth. Jaden smiled to himself, then slipped the photo back into his pocket and walked forward, toward a future he had once thought was impossible. Because now, for the first time in his life, he believed in something greater than survival. He believed in himself,